mėly konferencijos dalyviai, good already afternoon, all the participants of this conference. We are going to have this discussion in English because we have all the representatives of Baltic countries, Poland and Ukraine in our discussion, and I'm happy to ask them to come here on stage. The Minister of Transport and Communications of Lithuania, Marius Skuodis, Minister of Transport of Latvia, Talis Linkaits, Deputy State Secretary of the Estonian Ministry of Economic Affairs and Infrastructure, Kaupo, Läänerand, and Deputy Minister of Polish Ministry of Infrastructure, Grzegorz Witkowski. Also, I hope we'll be connected quite soon with Deputy Minister of Infrastructure of Ukraine, Mustafa Nayyem. He is currently in the United States, so I really admire his courage to wake up at 5 a.m. in New York time and have some chat with us. So I hope we'll have him online. And while we start to connect, our topic is reinventing supply chains in the time of uncertainty. So I would be very grateful for everyone to give some insights on the current situation of the sector and the national policy of each country. And then we can move forward and discuss about the common topics, common issues, potentials for future cooperation between 5 countries of ours. So let's start with the host, Minister of Transport of Lithuania, Marius Skuodis. So Marius, the floor is yours. What would be the main topics, the main points that you would like to make?
So thank you very much, and hello once again, now in English. How I see the situation, and I will try to provoke everyone a little bit.
Please do.
And my colleagues will probably give answers to me, to the questions that I have. In Lithuania, and in a broader region, we used, and I'm saying in the past, to present us as a bridge between East and West. And what has happened with war in Ukraine? One part of the bridge, the eastern part, is basically closed at the moment, with a lot of challenges for businesses, and especially those which are working with Asian economies, with Kazakhstan and neighboring countries. When we saw that, at the Ministry of Transport and Communications, we started to look to the West. And what we found, that we don't have sufficient number of contacts in the West. That's the challenge. Our railways, and from a broader perspective, state-owned enterprises, were and are dependent on the East. And for the first time in our history, we finally, from April this year, we finally have regular trains going to the West. 3 trains per week. In summer, we had 6 trains going to Duisburg, what is transported, containers and semi-trailers. We want to connect Duisburg with the largest port in northern Italy, port of Trieste, and there is another port where a lot of cargo is coming from Turkey and Middle East, and where cargo is going not only to Western Europe, but to Scandinavian economies. And this is happening for the first time in our history. So the challenge here is what to do for us to be able, to participate in the value chains which were between East and West, and which are now going from south to north, also circumventing through alternative routes, Russia and Belarus. I see our Ukrainian colleague connected here. For instance, there is high demand for different goods in Ukraine, for instance, oil products, we are transporting 4 to 5 trains per week with oil products to Ukraine. Demand is much higher. We can't meet the demand because we don't have infrastructure connecting us to the West. How to circumvent Belarus, which is participating in the war, how to circumvent Russia. And this is the challenge for our state-owned enterprises and logistics sector in general. On the positive side, I want actually to say compliments to our road carriers. Because in 2014, before Crimea was occupied, the majority of our transport services were dependent on Russia. Basically, we provided a lot of transport services to Russia. Now Russia, in terms of transport services, before the war, went from first place to third place. Belarus in 2014 was number 3, if I remember correctly, or number 4, but basically among number 5 most important countries. Now it's nowhere in our top 10 transport export markets. So road carriers were able to diversify. But this is only from macroeconomic perspective. For specific companies, there are a lot of challenges. But from the macroeconomic perspective, the road carriers managed to increase resilience a lot, while our state-owned enterprises, at least in Lithuania, were dependent on the East and are still dependent. And because of that, we have a lot of challenges and a very large shock, which we need to overcome together.
Thank you, Marius. Let's go to Latvia and Minister of Transport Talis Linkaits. What are your insights on situation in Latvia?
Yeah, definitely our situation is very similar to Lithuanian one. And I remember the first feelings after 24th of February when I was actually in Czech Republic discussing delivery of Skoda trains to Latvia. And the next day I realized that it will not be possible to deliver trains by rail because of the war. And when we started to discuss the situation, then of course we developed kind of a worst-case scenario. What will happen and what might happen with Latvian transport sector, taking into account how dependent, how involved we were in this bridge cooperation between East and West. And we calculated that the worst-case scenario would be that we have to decrease, for example, railway volume by 85%, and our port sector might have decreased in some 50% of volume because of this East-West trade. But now, when time has passed, actually the situation is not so bad. Actually, we are having an increase in railway volumes in comparison to the previous year. We have also increase in port volumes in Latvia. All 3 major ports are increasing different type of products, and it's because of this elasticity. It's because of ability to work in these very strict and challenging circumstances. It is our duty to maintain the current infrastructure, the railway infrastructure, and to take care that we use any opportunity to attract goods to the railway sector, to our port sector. This has been a motto, some kind of a major task for our civil servants. We had been on different missions to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, different other countries to find substitution of Russian and Belarusian products. What is possible where we can get a single ton of cargo and get to Latvia. And I'm very happy that finally we had been competing sort of with Lithuanian ports, and now I can say this year the total volume of Latvian ports is higher than of Lithuanian ports. But of course it's a great uncertainty, and we see that these cargo flows, directions are changing. We used to have this east-west direction. Now we see emerging a lot of north-south direction. And of course we are looking at Lithuania with eagerness to see how the infrastructure can be improved in order to withstand the increase. Those who are on a daily business traveling or commuting or having cargo shipments via Baltica route, you see how has been an increase in the cargo traffic, the trucks along the Via Baltica route, the congestions that are already there for some time. I very much hope that we in coming years we will manage to fix also the infrastructure, at least on the road part. We had been for many meetings discussing how to speed up Rail Baltica. This infrastructure had to be built already a long time ago, and now we would be very happy to use it for the change of existing routes. But no, unfortunately, the situation is as it is. We still hope to use the current rail line between Lithuania and Poland, but we see these bottlenecks and these difficulties in transporting goods via rail to help, for example, Ukraine for the grain products or to help Poland with the coal shipments. I very much hope that we succeed with building Rail Baltica line, but until then we have to find and have to use all means, all existing routes, and be very innovative in finding new ways, new corridors. And I'm glad that in cooperation with Poland we have managed to organize coal shipments from Colombia to Latvian ports, and then from Latvian ports to Poland on smaller ships or on a rail via Belarus. So there are new directions, there are new cargo shipments, but we also have to be very careful, and we with great cautiousness are looking at the development of the war situation in Ukraine.
Thank you, Minister. Now I'm going to disrupt a little bit the order, because we have Deputy Minister of Infrastructure of Ukraine who joined us via the virtual link, and I'm saying good morning to Mr. Mustafa Nayyem. Good morning, Mr. Nayyem. We don't have the sound of you, so can you check your computer? Yeah, we still don't hear you. Maybe.
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yeah, now it's good. So good morning. Thank you for joining us. This is the early morning for you, as I understand, right?
Yes, I'm sorry that it's the circumstances and the environment you see around me. It's just a hotel. We are now in New York. We just arrived with our minister to talk, to have a meeting with the United Nations representative on grain deal. So it is a tough business trip we had yesterday. We're in Washington. Anyway, thank you for your invitation. And first of all, I'm very grateful and grateful to participate at the conference. I know that our colleagues are there and they will be follow all meetings and all events there. And let me avail, first of all, myself of this opportunity to express our gratitude to the Minister of Transport and Communication, Mr. Marius Skuodis, and all the countries actually who have assisted us from the very first day of the invasion of by Russian on Ukraine. All of you, I think, were with us in our toughest moment and promptly made decisions of great importance in order to simplify the logistical aspects of freight transport, which in the face of the war has collapsed in the same, in some cases, completely paralyzed. And actually, I think this situation united all our logistic chains and united all our minds and united all our efforts. And I'm grateful for, first of all, for effectiveness of all our partners. I remember first days of the war when we was not able to deliver our not only military cargoes, but food and medicine. And I remember how many of you called us, and then we were at that moment on the ground, and we saw your efforts, what you did to open the borders, first of all, because this is the main problem. I understand that maybe for you it is something, you know, unusual to understand, but for us, we was totally isolated, not only because of war, but because also we are not the country which are member of of the European Union. So we are not in this custom area. So, and for us, it was nightmare to imagine what could happen if all countries around us will follow strictly the law and all the procedures which are in European Union. So I can say that I understand the risk which was taken by all officials, all representatives, all states, and first of all, Ministry of Infrastructure, Customs, and Border Services, which helped us to deliver all these cargoes. Thank you. And as you may know, the unjustified Russian aggression and barbaric invasion of Ukraine has damaged transport infrastructure, causing major transport disruption and leading to, I would say, massive supply chain problem for the EU and neighboring countries. Not to mention that the war in Ukraine was a continuous inflationary impact of the costs of raw materials, energy, logistic, and digital services. And in order to remedy the negative impacts of the war, various measures and many events would happen, such as supporting traffic flows, restoring freight supply chain, and helping to move civilians in need of medical care and humanitarian aid. And all these issues have been put all these 7 months. And for you to understand what actually happened and to estimate the problems which we encountered, since the invasion, up to 30% of the country's transport infrastructure has been damaged. Just imagine that 30%, reaching to various extents of severe damage. The cost we estimate now kind of 70 billion euros. I understand that this damage is something, you know, preliminary estimated because of we just saw what those infrastructure which we are controlling, because there are some part of our country which are still are not under control, so we don't know what is going on there. And at the moment, 12 civilian airports have been damaged. Almost 6,000 kilometers of railways was damaged. 25,000 kilometers of roads have been damaged. And all these things which I'm now saying didn't stop us. Any cargo was not stopped during all these 7 months, first of all, to the front line, and for us it's crucial. The second, to hospitals, because many injured and wounded people. are now there, and we should take them out to the control territory. And of course, we are also saying about those people who was displaced. And as 70% of Ukrainian exports were carried by sea before the war. And the massive blockade which was imposed by Russian forces on all ports in Black Sea and Azov Sea are the main problem for our export crisis. But you know that we started this grain deal, and I have good news is that for this month, in September, in October, we actually reached the amount which we exported before the war. So now we can imagine we have opened only 3 our Black Sea ports, and Odessa, big Odessa we call them, and of course we have 3 Danube reports, and of course it's trucks and railways. So in general, in common, we have kind of 7 million tons per month. We reached this figure just in October. Before that, we had 2 millions, 3 millions. In September, we had 4 millions. But now we reached this figure. So you can imagine what is going on our borders, what is going on our harbors, because lion's share of our harbors are still blocked. So of course we was not prepared for that. And currently almost 5 million tons of agricultural products have been shipped from the ports of Great Odessa. These shipments have allowed a price amelioration in addition to improving the humanitarian situation in those countries which where the population is on the verge of starvation, in particular in Ethiopia and Yemen. And of course we exported a lot of agricultural products to European countries.
Yeah.
And the food price, for you to understand the impact of that, the food price index of the Food and Agriculture Organization, which was estimated by them, of the United Nations, amounted to 138 points in August. This is 2% less than in July, and it is also 13% less than in March of this year, when the maximum growth of the index was recorded. So it is to mention that grain was not the only product delivered by sea. Therefore, we are talking about steel. We are talking about other products which are still stuck in our harbors. And of course, as we are facing an ongoing war, this is a very difficult task, since the capacity of the border crossing in the west of Ukraine are insufficient. Yep. Currently, road transport is the main mode of transport that provides Ukraine's the world with all the necessary goods. The most important challenge for Ukraine now is to create conditions to maintain the transport infrastructure at an appropriate functional state in the territories under Ukrainian control. Then for you to understand what is going on in the border, some days on our border with Poland, for example, we had queue 52 kilometers. Just imagine 52 kilometers. You're living in your cities, imagine this queue. And the people will stay in this queue for 2 weeks. So carrier to get something out, they should stay on queue 2 weeks. Now, of course, we doesn't have this kind of queues, and we understand that it's big efforts by our partners, by our services, but it's still this. We are glad now that we have queues 7 kilometers. Before war, we thought that crisis is when the queue reached 2 kilometers. It was big crisis. Now we are happy for 7 kilometers, but it means that people are staying for 3, 4, 5 days. So in order to remove barriers in the form of permits, because permits was another problem. You know that we last year, for example, before war, before full-scale war, in autumn, everything was stopped on Poland border. We had problems with other countries also because of permits. And I'm grateful to all European countries and all our partners. I really, you don't understand how important it was for us when we lift up this permit system. And in order to remove barriers in the form of permit for international road fracht transport, agreement between Ukraine and EU on the transport of goods has been concluded in June. Now we understand that it was one of the big problems. We come over there. And of course, we highly appreciate the decision that before the signing of the agreement in the EU, our big partners, for example, I would say all countries which are now here, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and all other countries, Poland, of course. Poland is one of the biggest our partners. They lifted these permits without even any agreement. So it was just mutual decision, and I'm very happy for you. And Ukraine's transport infrastructure now support is vital for the context of the country's economic and geographical situation. You know that our border on the east totally is closed. So we had this benefits from transit. Now everything is stopped. And we understand that it is the situation that we will continue for many, many years. And currently we are actively working on expanding the capacity of automobile checkpoints on the western border. Our ministry working on the reconstruction. A lot has been done on the Ukrainian-Polish border, and there are even more plans and work ongoing. We are currently working on opening the Krasnoyarsk and Yakivtsi checkpoint on the Ukrainian-Romanian border, and I hope maybe this month we will open also Nizhenkovichi is on the Poland border only for empty trucks. It will be temporary checkpoint. And for you to understand what is going on in Ukraine, for 30 years of independence, we opened only one additional checkpoint to the amount we had during Soviet time. Now, during this war, we already reconstructed 2 checkpoints, and we are ready to open 3 new checkpoints. It's during war. So you can imagine what is going on with our services. What I can say, my insight from this issue is that we understand that Ukrainian carriers now are suffering, but we will always remember these days. We will always remember what you did for Ukraine, for our carriers, and we understand that the situation we have now will not be solved, even if war will stop today. We will still have this problem because harbors and ports are mined. Our roads are still damaged. We have big problem with bridges. We have big problem with railways, and railways is one of the greatest things we had all these days and during war. But again, the main support we had from our partners. Thank you for you, and of course, if you have any kind of complaining on our services, because we understand that we can do something wrong, or maybe it was not so fast as we could be. We are going, and we are ready to change. We understand that this war opened many problems we had before. And my main message and main call to our partners will be, if we are going together to the joint future, please let's start simplification of our procedures. Please let's start joint control on the border. Please let's join control, at least tax and custom control. That will be much more fruitful than building up new checkpoints, which is obvious now that someday we will be part of European Union, and all these checkpoints will be museums. But we are now investing in that. We can spend this money on something better than to building just some facility on the border. So let's do this simplification, and I think that is the biggest opportunity for us to stay in history of our countries as those who simplified and those who joined Ukraine to European countries, and to those countries which are ready to accept us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nayyem, for this inspiring speech. So all the best at your job in United States. And there are some very good points that we are going to pursue in our discussion, which we heard for you. So have a great day, and Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Thank you. It was the Vice Minister of Ukraine, and there are some very good points that he talked over, and I think we can reflect on that, especially on the border control and so on. But let's go to Estonia, and then we're gonna have leave some time for discussion. So, Kaupo, what's your take on the situation from an Estonian point of view?
Thank you for inviting me, and I would like to thank all the countries behind this.
Do we have enough sound for Kaupo?
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. You should be good.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
No, the audience can't. Can we have a fast chat, please?
Can try to speak louder.
Louder.
Extremely loud.
Extremely loud.
Okay, can you just say
I can speak very loud. Okay.
Are we okay, guys?
Yeah?
Yeah, okay, let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, when we speak about the Estonian situation, then we have been living in crisis like you all, that it all started with COVID-19.
Yeah. Two microphones are always better than one.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion.
Test.
See?
Okay, thank you. So, for Estonia, as you, all the neighboring countries, it has been challenging the times of crisis. We are from COVID to the war in Ukraine. And when we think about what happened in Estonia, then definitely we understood the necessity to support ports and ship owners, because when we look at Baltic states, it's like peninsula, because when you think that eastern borders are not working so well, and it's actually, when you cut the corridor in Suwałki, then it's like island. So definitely to support the times of crisis, let's say, the security of your economy, then you need to have good working ports, and you need to support them in the crisis. So what we did definitely was to support our passenger ships in times of COVID, that they can keep working and can the cargo can be transferred between Scandinavia and Estonia and Baltic states. So definitely, in times of crisis, you need to support your ship owners. Also, we reduced the fairway dues to support our ports to be competitive, to get more cargo. And the times of COVID were challenging, but because of the war and the sanctions, then let's say our ports are definitely hit by it, because 50% of our cargo volumes are transit or were transit cargo. So this is this has dried up, and our ports are looking, as I understood from Latvian colleagues and Lithuanian colleagues, are looking ways to get new supply chains and new cargos. Also, when we speak about supporting the ports, then definitely there are a lot of ways to do it in the future. What our let's say our port owners have noticed, there is a bigger exchange of containers in Estonia, but also they see that a lot of cargo has been shifted from Asia to Europe. Then they said before it was containerization, it's now like trailerization. So a lot of cargos are used in trailers, and that's the way. One thing during the COVID, what happened was that one moment the government understood that there are not enough vital stockpiles. Is it medicine, or is it oil, or is it something else? And that's the reason why in Estonia we created National Stockpiling Agency. So they are responsible for all. Before it was in different organizations, but now there is one organization responsible for all the stockpiling of vital products. And in cases of crisis, we are more prepared. And there is, let's say, the definitely challenge for us is becoming more renewable. And to make, let's say, government fleet more renewable, we have made one big governmental reform. We consolidated all state-owned vessels into one agency. That the process is ongoing, but the reason is that we had 8 different organizations. They had their own ships to fulfill the government functions, which as taxpayer, it's a lot of money. So to be more efficient, to get more competencies for green technologies, we are consolidating those in new agency. And also we are already trying to make a test for new technologies. For example, more government-owned ships on biomethane, because you can produce it from the garbage, and it's let's say produced 20 kilometers away from Estonian port.
Okay.
So it's not it has not carried across the world. So I understand for European Union it's also important that everything is not taken far away. Our port owners has also seen that the supply changes, let's say in case of steel, before everybody got it from Russia, now our ship owners bring it in from Sweden, from Spain, from Turkey. It's a little bit more expensive, but in the end the supply corridors are becoming shorter. And one thing what definitely the crisis has taught us and is that good communication between government and sector, because was it COVID-19, now the sanctions, there was continuous flow of information between sector. We had the contact points that's established because they need to make decision where to send their transport means, what to do. Are they going to send their trucks or other means of transport to third countries? What's going to happen? How dangerous it is for their security? And yeah, we have been dealing with this, and definitely I was last week in Cyprus in Maritime conference, and the clear message was that the taxonomy and tax exemptions, which is not popular topic in political level, it's definitely the keys to support the sector in the economy, security, and all different areas. Okay. So yeah, that's a small introduction what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaupo. And then let's move to our several neighbors, Poland. Grzegorz Witkowski is with us, so I'll ask you to give some points, and then maybe we can react to some points that was made by the Ukrainian colleague.
Thank you very much for inviting me now on this meeting. Thank you. And this meeting is in a specific time, crisis time, war crisis, refugees crisis, economic crisis. And as a Poland, we have similar problems with my colleagues from the Baltic states and all the states, basic Baltic Sea. But we are in the first weeks after the war in Ukraine. Between our border with Ukraine, we have to bring 5 million people, women, children, families, and we do it. But we do it, and such problems, it's more expensive, but we had to do it because everybody do it on our place. But we are in different place, because we has a good practice and good tradition with cooperate with our neighbors from Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, with our south neighbors on the south side, Slovakia, Czech Republic. And this meeting is about transportation system. And this pandemic time, about talking my colleagues, pandemic time show us how we don't prepare to suddenly cut supply chain, and we didn't prepare to build alternative supply chain, strange ports, strange companies, shipping companies, rail companies, and we suddenly have to do it. And for instance, for example, Rail Baltica. We're talking about Rail Baltica since 30 years, and I won't say to tell you that in time 2 years on the Polish side, Rail Baltica will be finished on our Polish distance. And I talked with my colleagues, Julius, Minister of Transport, and I hope so that you too for 5-6 years will be due. And look, if you look on the European transportation map, so Via Carpathia, next big projects, infrastructural, which we do it on eastern Poland. Poland and Lithuania since 6 centuries. We have bonus from our geopolitical location. But in 20th century, this corridor east-west was disaster. And we have to change, and we have to build a new corridor, new perspective, new transportation perspective, north-south. So from Tallinn in Estonia to Saloniki in Greece, we have to do new corridor, railroads, roads, but after war in Ukraine, this corridor south-north have to connect with Ukraine to port in Odessa, connect to Chisinau, connect to Constanța in Romania. So we will, it depends, 10, maybe 15 years, a new architects transportation in our side in Europe, our part in Europe, and then we will be stronger, but safety, because now when corridor is east-west, any bonus has for Russia, Germany, Belarus, states on our left side and the right side, and it's not good. It's not good. I think it's not good while actually crisis on Ukraine. Railroad. If we will be railroad to port of Gdańsk, for example, so we will be help and support to market Ukrainian to export his grain, his coal by Baltic ports to around the world. And now Black Sea is blocked by Russian warships. So it shows us how we have support and building and continue our huge infrastructural projects. Okay. Ports. I want to tell you in Gdańsk Bay on the Baltic Sea. In next 5 years, we will build a new floating storage regasification unit, as you have in Klaipėda ports. In Świnoujście on west side Baltic Sea, we will build a new deep water container terminal. So after join Finland and Sweden to NATO, the Baltic Sea, our sea, will be inside NATO Sea. It's a very big chance for our states, but this is very responsibility for us. We have invest to submarines. We have invest to the Navy, Army, our country. So a lot of topics, and we can talk about this more and more. But thank you for inviting me on these meetings, and I'm glad to tell you what is our perspective. Okay. It's perspective country which live in permanent risks from our its neighbor, from our east I don't know who, terrorists.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister. Well, I have so many questions and very little time, so let's stick to the few, several most important ones. And I would like to ask Vice Minister to reflect you on what your colleague from Ukraine said about the simplicity of simplifying the procedures. That was his request, most likely towards Poland, with the largest border with Ukraine. But and so I'll ask briefly to reflect on that, and for other colleagues just to talk about again briefly about, well, the simplicity goes hand to hand with digitalization of infrastructure. So your thoughts on the short-term projects, introducing 5G and all of things. Let's start with simplification. Is that possible during the war to simplify the rules when sometimes the rules are even more strictly enforced because of the war? How do you see it?
It's a normal and good direction that new solution, smart solution, intelligent solution will be in transportation. It automatically in logistics, automatically in ports. For instance, Polish ports has a new make a new port community system. It's port is IT systems which can proceed in the port, are smarter, are faster, and we will don't any time any ships we haven't risk congestion in ports because for example coal. Now we have to import a million tons coal from Indonesia, from South Africa, from Colombia, and on the before ports, Szczecin, Świnoujście, or Gdańsk, or Gdynia, can be start congestion. So any processing, digitalization, and processing intelligent solution is crucial. The same is if you ask me about railroad or road route and traffic by car, by cargo from Ukraine, but the same is on the south border and west border road in Poland, between Poland and Germany, and Poland, Czech Republic. So it's normal and good direction.
Mr. Skuodis, maybe you can reflect on the priorities of the cooperation among the 4 or maybe even five countries when we talk about going into the digital age, transforming the infrastructure. Because as your Latvian colleague mentioned, that yes, sometimes our countries are being looked like competitors, and I remember even the outrage few years ago when our former prime minister said that Latvians at first are competitors for Lithuanians. It was like a big public outcry that no, we are brothers and sisters first, and then only we are competitors on the market. However, the war changed the perspective. So how do you see the priorities of cooperation among our countries?
There were a number of topics mentioned. So since cargo used to go from east to west, now the direction might be new, from south to north and from north to south. And also cargo will be coming from far east through south, let's say so. Now the question is what to do. So in the short term, the idea is very simple, that was mentioned by our Ukrainian colleague, to get rid of all bureaucracy that is possible. And what we are working on together with all the neighboring countries is to get rid of paper documents and logistics. That takes time, tax inspectorates needs to be involved and so on, but we want to achieve progress further than faster than the final date set by the European Union. We want to set the pace, and we're working on that. So this is in the short term.
So, excuse me, what pace is it? What do you have some
So in Europe,
schedule?
the agreement is that we need to conclude by 25.
Yeah.
We want to do it by 24. Okay. We will see how we can succeed. So this is in the short term. In the longer term, the challenge is infrastructure. In the longer term, we will have Rail Baltica, which will connect all the Baltic countries with Poland, and we will move further to the west. In the shorter term, we're working on the so-called Amber train, connecting all the Baltic countries, which will arrive to the middle of Lithuania, Kaunas intermodal terminal, where we can change different railway tracks from Russian standard, Eastern standard, to European one, and where we can use it to go to the west. The challenge is infrastructure on the border, so Rail Baltica will change. But when working on Rail Baltica, we need to do much more, and therefore we are cooperating with our Polish colleague how to strengthen infrastructure on the eastern border, on the eastern part of Poland, then how to connect railways and roads with Ukraine, and how to move even to the southeast point, Romania, with Constanța port and so on. We want, those new routes to be including into European, trans-European networks, to be recognized as important for the entire European Union. And I'm sure that with these routes, we will increase resilience of the European Union's transport system as such, because history shows if something is struck somewhere, even in the middle of Europe, we need alternatives. And we are going to build one along the eastern border of the European Union.
Mr. Linkaits, we have been speaking about railways and Rail Baltica and roads. Other branch of transport which Latvia is always seriously invested in is aviation. What is your views on short-term development and logistic with the help of aviation and solving these logistical problems which appeared because of the disappearing of the connections with Russia and Belarus?
Yeah, of course, aviation takes its role in logistic chains and delivering product, goods and services. And of course, the war in Ukraine has changed a lot the map of flights, the directions that are possible, and also our cargo services have lost some of the shipments from China because of the overflight of Russia. It's not possible anymore, and the carriers that were flying also are not allowed European airspace. But at the same time, we see that also the aviation sector is changing, and new routes also, if we look at Far East direction, then over North Pole have been re-established again, and also the via Asia routes are opening up. I think overall the different types, different directions of our logistic companies, we see that historically Baltic Sea region has been the most active, the most innovative, the most smart in finding solutions in different and difficult circumstances. So I believe that despite all the challenges, we have a bright future ahead, and also this conference shows that there are solutions, and if we look at from innovative, from our experience, we can find good solutions in all transport sector fields.
Well, our time is almost at end, so a final question for our colleague from Estonia. So what are your points of view on a short-term development of infrastructure and maybe some innovations that comes hand in hand with digitalization and maybe advance of new kind of transport like electromobiles and so on? How does Estonia sees that in the context of the region?
Thank you for the question. Definitely what was mentioned by my colleagues, the bottleneck between Lithuanian and Poland border would have to be solved between the different railway sizes to switch over. It will help us all. Also, the electronic standardized digital freight document, what we are all dreaming about, I think it's gives competitiveness for all of the Baltic states and Poland, so we should at least get our system working, and then we should be forerunners in this area. Definitely, it takes political and public sector support. So when politicians are ready to do it and they see it as increasing competitiveness and the future, then I don't see any problems in there. And of course, developing together single window systems to access all the digital systems around us, e-taxation, e-accounting. So if we can make those systems to connect each other well, then all Baltic states and Poland will win from it. Definitely one underestimated, because the transport, they always have to be, there has to be different ways. So one of the things what is in near-shoring, everything comes from Asia closer. One thing was what is underestimated, maybe it's short sea shipping. Even at the moment, without renewable fuels, the shipping is most economical way to transport cargo. It's the cheapest way and with lowest emissions to transfer 1 ton of cargo per 1 nautical mile. So we definitely have to invest in there. When we use renewable fuels on those short sea ships, then it will be even more economical. So definitely we should invest in this area, because, for example, from Tallinn to the heart of German industry by the ship, it's 30 hours of driving without any restrictions, just go ahead. And Europe, as we know, especially Western Europe, is well connected with all the channels, rivers, networks, so you can get really close into the industrial areas. So definitely short sea shipping is one of the advantages. One thing what at least Estonia is looking, I am quite sure that neighboring countries as well, is because of the nearshoring from Asia to Europe, we are supporting investments in our ports. And what is good thing about Estonian deep water ports is we have a lot of free area around it. So is it development of green technologies? Is it development, I don't know, blades of offshore wind farms? So we are really supporting the production in there. And talking about Rail Baltic, it's definitely we see around the stops of Rail Baltic, we see the logistics hub created in the future. And when we speak about the ports, they are definitely ambition of using digital systems. We are digitalizing in Estonian ports already. And of course, for example, Port of Tallinn is trying to create digital twin. And there are some dangers in going to very digitalized that, for example, we have auto mooring systems. You don't have to, because let's say technology takes over when the big passenger ferries goes to port alongside the quay. Sometimes let's say the system is wanted to let go the ship in Helsinki, but it let go in Estonia. So digital system can be also dangerous in many areas. But I see a lot of ambition in transport sector, and I had meeting with the Estonian maritime industry companies a couple of weeks ago, and I see that they are trying to solve the challenges. For example, challenge with using methanol is that it requires 2 times more volume than diesel oil. So the companies at the moment are finding the way how to rebuild existing ships on methanol, but with this, and get the amount of space required inside the ship. It requires new technologies, new approach of the structures inside the ship. Yeah. But if we overcome of this challenge, then definitely we can get one more step closer. But again, cooperation. So.
Actually, yeah, and it was interesting to hear some during this discussion and on the public space also some disappointment that 32 years of independence for Baltic countries, and there are still some problems remaining from all times. But I suppose that during the peacetime, it's kind of harder to solve this problem than in wartime, which actually becomes blessing in disguise. So that's all the time we have for our discussion today. I thank all the panelists, Marius Skuodis, Talis, Linkaits, Kaupo, Läänerand, and Grzegorz, Witkowski. And I'm Andrius Tapinas. Thank you for your attention. Please give a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you very much.